A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program African Discourse on Independent Television. My name is Evan Sunofuge. Well, if you watch television, you would have seen the various cities, the various communities that have been ravaged by the flood that is said to have been caused by the release of water in Lagdo. Lagdo is in Cameroon, one of the West African countries, and of course one nation that a lot of persons will not hesitate to blame as far as the recent flooding is concerned in Africa today. Well, that's one argument on one side, while some persons also believe that the recent flooding issues that African countries are facing today is not caused by any release of any dam. It is caused as a result of climate change, as a result of, individual practice, the way people live their lives, the way people go about deserting, drainage and all that. And of course, the way people just live their daily life in such a way that it affects nature. Well, today on the program, African Discourse, we're going to be looking at Africa's ravaging flood, causes, and of course, possible remedies. Well, today we are so privileged to have sanitarian Frank Inenemo. He is an environmental sanitationist, and of course, he's with the Edo State Ministry of Health here in the State. Sir, you're welcome to this program, African Discourse.
Evans, it's my delight to be here.
Okay, all right. Perhaps we may just continue from the last show we had the other day on This Morning on ITV, where we talked about the ravaging flood, but only the fact that we situated it to Nigeria. But we understand that the ravaging flood today has extended beyond the Nigerian coast. As a matter of fact, more than 10 West African countries is presently being affected by the ravaging flood. From your own perspective, what do you think is the cause, so that we begin to know how we can prevent such a thing, in future, against the argument that it is because of the Lagdo Dam that has been released?
Okay. The issue of flood has become a global emergency. So situating it to even Africa is still an underestimation. Now, the issue of the release of water from the Lagdo Dam has become controversial as a result of the revelations from the Honorable Minister for Water Resources, who, during a budget defense at the National Assembly, said as a minister there had been this speculation that Nigeria had an MOU with Cameroon for the building of a dam. But that he has gone through all the papers of the ministry, but he's yet to find where such MOU was. Again, that the issue of the Lagdo Dam is just 1%. But however, Nigeria was not informed until after 24 hours. But I know NIMET, whatever that stands to protect, I don't know. But I know NIMET, NIMASA, and all the relevant meteorological agencies had, from the beginning of the year, have been making forecasts as to the issue of Cameroon likely to release water from the Adamawa province, because there's Adamawa province in Cameroon, and we have Adamawa state, so which is northern Cameroon. So Adamawa province in Cameroon, in northern Cameroon, releasing water that is now an issue. But before I would dwell more on the release of water from the Lagdo Dam, you see, Nigeria today, Africa today, is getting its fair share of this global emergency, global environmental challenge. Let me attribute it more to, if I'm to go by the words of the Minister of Water Resources, to maybe human anthropogenic activities. Let's look at climate change, for example. Well, don't forget that we are talking of an overflow of water discharging into streets, roads, impeding traffic, and causing colossal damages and loss of lives and properties. Now, what are the human anthropogenic activities? Let's look at one, gaseous emission. I stated there the other day, the Swahilan proverb says, do not borrow of the earth, for if you do, you will pay with great interest. Now, we have overstretched the earth resources. We have done it to a level that isn't beyond the maximum threshold that amounts to taking the resilience of the environment, recuperating itself back, you know, by nature. And today, what do we now have? Desertification, deforestation, exploration and exploitation of earth resources that has now that have now left the earth to agent of denudation. Okay? Now, what are the causes? Issue of climate change is very apt. As I speak to you now, the burning of fossil fuel is still an issue. We are still burning. How many vehicles are on the road now? In fact, studies have shown that with the issue of gaseous emission and the amount of CFC gases are chlorofluorocarbons, you know, that have saturated the atmosphere. So even if the earth decides to stop today for further emission, which is not feasible, which is not possible, for the next 200 years, the amount that have saturated the atmosphere will continue. And what is the effect? Now, we have this ozone layer. Ozone layer is a natural occurring gas. O3, for those of us who have background in chemistry. Oxygen is O2. The additional element there, O3, is for the ozone gas. It's a naturally occurring gas put there at the stratosphere. Because the solar system is divided into layers. You have the biosphere, the lithosphere, the mesosphere, the hydrosphere. Let's don't bother ourselves about that. But the stratosphere accommodates the ozone layer that has to prevent the direct ultraviolet radiation of sunlight to the earth. Now, because of the heat trappers, the emission of the CFC gases, the fluorofluorocarbons, these gases have saturated the atmosphere, will allow the energy from sun to enter the earth, which makes the earth conducive for life to exist. Okay. But the irradiated energy cannot go back because these heat trappers have now formed a blanket.
Okay, so from your perspective.
Now, with climate change yeah. There is a shift in the average climatic pattern.
Okay.
So that shift now is negative. That's why we now have, if it's going to be rainfall, it will be excess. In fact, since this year, October has witnessed in Benin City more rainfall than we had even in August or in July.
Okay. All right. So let's see some of the countries that we're told that have been affected by the Lagdo Dam water now. We have Republic of Benin, Burkina Faso, and of course Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau. We also have like parts of Liberia, Mali, Mauritania, and of course Nigeria. So almost about 12 countries, all West African countries that have been affected by the Lagdo Dam. Now let's get to watch the video of the release of the Lagdo Dam. We made a video footage. We have a video footage that so that our viewers out there can see the Lagdo Dam that is responsible for the flooding that parts of major communities, major cities in Nigeria are facing. The Lagdo Dam, we have that video there. And of course, we also have some other videos that we are also going to be showing you so that you know that we are actually talking about flood. So let's see the Lagdo Dam video, the Lagdo Dam video as the water have been released, the Lagdo Dam video as the water have been released. All right, so as we are waiting now, Mr. Frank Inenemo, we still have you here. You know, just like what we said, that from the scientific point of view, experts tries to explain the reason why the recent flood we're facing now, the reason why we're facing it. But from other points of view, we also see that it is because of the Lagdo Dam, you know, that has been released. I mean, but what we are saying is that this is not the first time that perhaps Africa, West African nations, are kind of experiencing this flooding activities. So what do you think is responsible? It's almost been a year in, year out thing.
Yes, we have I have explicated on one of the major factors, the depletion of the ozone, issues of climate change. Let's look at reclamation. Reclamation of water bodies. As I speak to you now, if you go to areas in Lagos like Lekki, Victoria Island, there are ongoing reclamation, which to me, people are sitting on keg of gunpowder. So when you build on natural ways, there will be a reverberating effect over time. And you see, the control we have over water is when the water is inside your cup. In fact, between water and fire outbreak, I don't know which one can be more severe.
Okay.
Well, for water, you cannot call water a fire brigade because there's no water brigade. But for fire, there may be fire brigade to come and help you put out fire.
Okay.
But in the case of water, none. So I think water is can be more, disastrous.
Okay, so what we're watching here now is the release of the Lagdo Dam that is said to be responsible for the flooding that communities, states are experiencing in Africa today. So we can see that, and also we also get to see the effects, so that we see major cities being affected by the release of water. So you can see the Lagdo Dam. Now we understand that there are so many arguments about this, how the Cameroonian government had an alliance, an agreement with Nigerian government and all that, and of course how Nigerian government did not do their own bid of the agreements, all these allegations, counter allegations and arguments and all that. But let's talk about human practice that you mentioned a while ago, which is largely responsible for the climate change that we have today. Now, are there alternative ways of life that we can begin to consider so that we don't have, the climate being affected, we don't have the nature being affected?
Well, let's look at the way and manner individuals, without caution to regulatory details, build our houses on natural waterways. Let's look at siltation of water bodies, which can no longer accommodate the reception of water. Let's also look at siltation of our drains, blockage of our drains, the way and manner people, the lackadaisical manner in which people handle our waste, particularly with plastic waste, the non-biodegradable waste is a very, very big issue. And, all these activities coupled with effect of the ozone depletion that has resulted to climate change, that has resulted to global warming, because the global warming again has also resulted in where you now see there's melting of a land-based polar ice cap. And this polar ice cap will find their way, they will melt and find their way to water bodies and swell up these water bodies. It's all over. And these water bodies can lead to what you call river flood, because there will be an overflow. Most of that, the river, let me give you a typical scenario. During dry season now, if you pass through some of these surface water bodies along the road, at the center you will see sand. At the center, you'll be wondering, once upon a time, a few months back, this whole place was covered with water. All those sand you see are supposed to be properly dredged. Then, if we can have alternative to renewable energy, at the Niger Delta now, gas flaring is still going on. Gas flaring is still going on. The issue of gas flaring has become politicized, and that is really heating up more on the ozone layer across the entire Niger Delta, even up to as far as to Kaduna, where refining of oil, crude oil is going on. Kaduna refinery, petrochemical, whatever. You still have, gas flaring going on, in those places. So the issue of gas flaring is there. burning of fossil fuel is there. We manage our waste lackadaisically. Then situation of our drains, lack of urban renewal drive. Even where that is done, it's not really intensified. And some persons who consider themselves as untouchable, sacred cow, built anyhow on natural waterways. Of course, what goes around, obviously, will come around.
Okay.
So that is part of the issue.
Yeah,
and indeed is a serious one.
Yeah, for the sake of emphasis, viewers out there, we told you a while ago that Benin Republic, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, and of course Liberia, Mali, Niger Republic, and even Nigeria are the countries that have been affected by the release of the Lagdo Dam that we've been told. Now, you can see, now, what we did, we made this video with no particular reference to a particular country. We just, picked at random various cities, various major towns in West Africa that have been affected. We have some in Anambra State here in Nigeria, and of course we have some places in Ghana. We also have some places in Niger, and there are some places in Liberia. So this is the effects of the Lagdo Dam that has been released by the Cameroonian, in Cameroon. Anyway, let's back to Mr. Frank Nenemo now. The effect now, because we are talking about the effect now so that we can also know how we can begin to also prevent this kind of situation. Because the effect, as we speak, is already, counting on people. So many types of effects. It's going to affect us agriculturally, and of course other effect that we're going to be experiencing. Now, what are the major effects? Let's start from you. You are the expert here. What are the major effects?
I'm really pained and I'm passionate about this matter because precious lives are being wasted. Drowning, number one. We've lost lives. Drowning, people have drowned. We hear about, even from neighboring Delta, Anambra, Enugu State, in the process of trying to evacuate, people trying to run away to safer ground. But I think they didn't heed earlier warnings. Because I can recall vividly that this station had a lot of jingles, from Edo State government, warning people who live in waterfronts to please relocate, because at this period they are going to be drowning and loss of life. It's very unfortunate. Destruction to properties, ardent properties. A lot of people are being displaced as we speak. Then another pathetic one again. There's resurgence of pests and dangerous animals, reptiles. Recently I heard that the water swept python and other even hippopotamus from the large forest even into town. Of course, that's dangerous to lives and property. Now, another painful aspect again, people are no longer having access to potable water supply. I was made to understand that even neighboring Bayelsa here, a sachet of table water goes for as far as about 100 naira.
Okay, this video.
So there is pollution.
This video is this is Lagos, Nigeria. This video is Lagos, Nigeria. And if we allow this video to roll more, we can see all the cities. We have the one in Ghana. We have some in Cote d'Ivoire. We also have some in Niger Republic. So this particular one is in Lagos, Nigeria. You can see the expanse of destruction. And of course, this is a major road that has been affected by flood. It's very pathetic. All right, so sanitarian, yeah, very, very pathetic. We see this is somewhere in Ghana, I suppose. This is somewhere in Ghana, and this is also in Nigeria now. This is Nigeria, where we have this is a city, this is a town, and it's a road, but we only have a boat, somebody pedaling a boat on a major road, and this is some of the effects that we are beginning to see. More than 10 countries in West Africa have been affected by the release of Lagdo Dam in Cameroon. So it's a very, very pitiable situation. And of course, the effect is going to go down. As you can see, okay, this is Lokoja, somewhere in Kogi State in Nigeria here. This is Lokoja in Kogi State in Nigeria. This is a whole expanse of city. And of course, we're told that more than 11 local governments in Lokoja, in Kogi State, have been affected by this flood. That is the way it is in other major cities in West Africa. A very, very pitiable sight, pitiable situation. There's the one that has to do with Ghana, where we saw almost a whole story building being covered. You can see top roof of you can imagine sanitarium. You can imagine.
Well, it's really overwhelming.
Very, very overwhelming.
The effects are there. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's just that we are going to. In fact, it's not just only the ecological effect.
Yeah. You
have the health effect. You also have the economic and other, sundry issues that will arise.
Now that you mentioned the health effects, just as this thing happened, days ago we heard of cholera outbreak breaking again in Nigeria. We saw the figures rolling into hundreds and all that, how people have been affected by cholera in parts of Nigeria.
You see, I listened attentively to your program on Friday, where you anchored the state epidemiologist, Dr. Waifuku, on the issue of cholera outbreak. And if I can still remember, not less, although it's still lucky, he said there's no
case
confirmed case.
No confirmed case yet.
I'm using his words.
Yeah.
So, you see, access to adequate potable water supply now is impeded. So there's likely now to be outbreak of water-related diseases. Normal family life have been disrupted. So people are being displaced. So we are going to experience more of IDPs as part of the social effect. More slum areas are going to emerge. Okay, people are going to be displaced. The structural integrity of buildings are going to be further compromised. So the likelihood that there will be more collapsed building is imminent, and then more lives are likely to be lost in the process. So the health effect is really overwhelming. It's overwhelming because where people are no longer going to have access to adequate potable water, you can stay without food for a day, not without water, for hygienic purposes, because we use water for a very degree of purposes. So if people can no longer have, because there's going to be ground pollution, water pollution, surface water pollution. So when there is no longer access to adequate potable water supply, what would, especially for safe water drinking, a lot of arable land will be destroyed. As I speak to you now, there at Udochi in Esako,
Edo North.
Yeah. I was told that they are even getting close to harvest season from November, October, November. So there is great challenge now for global food security. And then, as we speak, the traffic is being interfered with, being impeded. Coming from Lokoja end, you cannot get transportation of food down to south and vice versa. So the challenge for food security, go to market now, go and price any commodity now, and we are entering very soon. We are entering festive period. So you look at it from all angles. There is no aspect of human endeavor that this the effect is not affecting. Okay. The effect of this major environmental issue of this flood is not taking its toll on it.
All right, so let's quickly take a pause so that we take some water here, rest a while. We'll be right back. Don't forget the program is African Discourse. And we're looking at the ravaging flood on the continent of Africa. Precisely West African nations, more than 10 West African nations have been affected by the recent flood, which is, said to have been caused by the release of Lacto Dam, the release of water from the Lacto Dam in Cameroon. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
decision.
All right, thank you so much. The program still here, African Discourse on Independent Television. Yes, we are looking at Africa's ravaging flood, causes and possible remedies. Now, we've got the record that more than 1.5 million children are at risk as the devastating flood hits Nigeria. And of course, we also understand that more than 19 African countries have been affected so far by the ravaging flood. That, if you put that together, at least a total of 3.5 million people have been affected on the continent of Africa. And most of the countries affected in Africa, most of them are from West Africa. We also understand that more than 600 persons are dead in Nigeria from flood disasters since June. Particularly in this month of since September to the month of October, we understand that a wholesome amount of people have died as a result of flood in Nigeria. Now, we're still looking at the effects. We talked about the ecological effects. You hinted on it. And of course, let's look at the agricultural effects now, because that seems to be a major concern. We are fast approaching the harvest season. As we speak now, a bag of rice, local rice, sold sells for more than 40,000 naira. We understand that major farms in Africa have been affected by, this flood. So which way do we go?
You see, the agricultural effects vis-a-vis the economic effects. They are hand in gloves. Like I was made to understand from Edo North, they do a lot of rice farming in that area. This was getting close to harvest season when this incident occurred. Flooding naturally is known to impoverish the soil. So soil nutrients are usually eroded.
No, we're talking about harvest now. Yeah.
Soil nutrients naturally are already eroded.
Yeah.
Before you now have a situation where there's damage to arable land, and then effect on even crops that are already almost due for harvest. So it is a very serious challenge. Destruction to crops that are already... I was made to understand that even there, most of the farmland in those flood-prone areas, where you have some cassava, they just manage to not hurriedly harvest the immature one to see if the little they can salvage, because a lot of destruction have been done. In fact, it's so painful that the northern states that we used to think were spared of issues of flooding are even worse hit now, particularly with areas around northwest and northeast. So, God will help us next year. That's the only way, because what is beyond you, you cannot contend with. You hand over to God.
Okay.
How will you be able to cope with food issues bordering on food next year? Maybe God will.
We're talking about this. You're talking about next year. I mean, this is the harvest season. We're talking about this year.
Harvest season now.
Let's talk about this year first.
Leads us into next year planting season before we look forward to another harvest again. So the year is November. October is almost gone. We're entering November. Before you know it, we're already entering planting season for next year. And with the problem of climate change, the cropping pattern now has been altered. You can still imagine now in October, the rains are still as heavy as if we are still in June and July. So there is economic effect, there is agricultural effect, and then people are being displaced. And there is, when man is settled, we'll be thinking of how to arrange himself to prepare land for cropping. When the man is displaced from his house, he's thinking of how to survive, and let alone thinking of how to go about other economic ventures. So it is a serious challenge.
Okay. Now let's stretch our discussion further this afternoon. We understand that far away in Ghana, of course, Ghana may just be one of our next door neighbors here, but let's, for the sake of emphasis now, we understand that in Ghana, that the government of the day there is trying to restitute the farmers there so that the effects of the flood can be cushioned in such a way that they won't feel it. But the question is restitute farmers. We're talking about farmers that their crops have been destroyed. How do you restitute such farmers? Are you going to give them money, even if you give them money to go back into farming immediately? We're talking about crops that are due for harvest. How do we make up for that? Now, let's also look at it. If Nigerian government tried to do this back home, how would that be?
Well, I am not an agriculturist, but if I'm to go by, I think there is a national grains reserve.
In Nigeria?
In Nigeria.
In Nigeria?
Yes, for which, respite can come to farmers.
We have it in Nigeria here.
I think I'm made to understand.
Not that you think.
There's a national grains reserve. And then there should be deployment. That is, again, at the purview of the federal
That brings to
government.
mind the rice pyramid.
Ecological
the rice
fund.
pyramid,
Yes.
Mr. Frank. The rice pyramid we had some time ago. I think at this point, juncture now, we begin to question where is that rice pyramid now? Because most of our rice farms have been destroyed. So one would have thought that the rice pyramid should come on board now.
Well, that is why I said National Grains Reserve. So the rice pyramid was not in the farm. Was supposed to be post-harvest gains, which was now to be put in a reservation. So I think the federal government who arranged that, because that issue has became controversial, became contentious. So the issue of rice pyramid is still again part of the arrangement for the National Grains Reserve, which again lies within the purview of the federal government. And then beyond that, there should be, I think, deployment of ecological funds, which again is a federal government responsibility, cascaded down to states, then from states, maybe local government again will get their fair share. That's, I think, the way it works. So restitution for farmers can come in form of subsidies, fertilizers, just to give them respite, and possibly see how they can help them going to arrange for more mechanized arrangement rather than the manually prepared arrangement most farmers does. And Nigeria is so blessed. Unlike Ghana, I'm told, I've not been there, that their soil is not as fertile as the one we have. So if they are already thinking ahead to restitute for their farmers, rather than we following or copying from them, I think Nigerian government at the federal level should be thinking in that direction, so that respite can come to these farmers.
Okay. All right. So let's see more of the videos. We have plenty of the videos there. Let's see more of the videos across major cities in Africa. Yes, this is also a place somewhere in Africa. All right, somewhere in Africa there. Let's see more of the videos so that we get to see what we are talking about today. All right, so the program is still here, African Discourse on independent television, and we are still looking at Africa's ravaging flood, very recent. We've seen various countries in Africa, particularly in West Africa, that have been affected by the ongoing flood. And we've also seen that there are reasons why this flood has come. There's an argument that is tied to the Lagdo Dam that has been released in Cameroon. And of course, we also have some climate change issues, just like what the expert, Mr. Frank Inenemo, is talking about here. Now, we've been looking at the effects. We've talked about the agricultural effects. Now, let's look at the ecological effects. This is Lagos, Nigeria, where we saw that a while ago. This is Lagos, Nigeria, one of the major cities, one of the major states in Africa affected by flood. Now, Mr. Frank Inenemo, let's look at the ecological effects now. Now, we understand that when we talk about flood, it takes time for the soil that have been affected now. Most of the nutrients in the soil have been depleted. Now, can we immediately recover from this depletion of nutrients in our soil for farmers to use more?
Well, before I quickly go on that, let me respond quickly to the ecological effects as it borders on environmental degradation, and then a reduction in the aesthetic value of the physical environment. Because with flood, there's going to be a reduction in the aesthetic value and then serious environmental degradation. Then talking about the impoverishing of the soil, it takes time for the topsoil to develop those nutrients. And having been eroded, it takes time again to develop itself or recuperate itself. So it's not going to be a tea party.
When we say it takes time, for how long? Say for how long?
The agriculturists are in better position, but from my own experience, it cannot, you have to replenish the soil. And what do you do in replenishing the soil? A lot of environmental friendly fertilizers.
Or recycling.
Recycling of waste.
Yeah.
So it takes time. And you have NPK, the nitrogen, potassium, and the other element again.
Phosphorus.
Phosphorus that makes it a complete. So it takes, and the natural fertilizers are better, coming from human waste, decay, plant residue, and all that. And then with this sweeping erosion that has taken place of these nutrients, it will take a good number of time. We should not be looking at 4 or 5 years, except something is done, like we talked about restitution now. There are these artificial fertilizers being given to farmers to replenish the soil so that they can now grow food. But you cannot compare the quality of the food from NPK fertilizer to the ones that are grown naturally, because that again can portend another effect on market, because there will be what you call bioconfiguration in the plant, and by the time it gets to man, these are chemicals. You never can tell the damage such chemicals can again be doing into. So it's like solving one problem, you are creating what we be doing to the vital organs in the system.
Now, it seems we are focusing our attention on agricultural on farm products now. Now, let's also turn our focus to animal products. We understand we can't get that video now, but there's a certain farm in Niger Republic, where we are told that a total of about 3,000 heads of cows now, have been affected by this flood. So for
300.
about 3,000. 3,000.
Okay.
So for such a situation, how do we expect such a nation, such a farmer to recuperate?
Like I said earlier, the power of water is only when we have it inside our cup. If this water can wash hippopotamus, wash other dangerous carnivorous animals, is it cow? Cow is just a tip of the iceberg. So when we have to fall back to rebuilding again, rearranging, reorganizing ourselves. And that's where, because it's already beyond the individual, government of each country will have to come in to do this restitution and bring respite to farmers, because you cannot stay without food. When you are fasting, you know you are fasting. On a normal day, you have to eat to live and to survive. So there's nothing anybody can do about it. There have to be respite. You have to come in form of subsidy. You have to come in form of so many things by government. The economists have to come. It's going to be a whole lot post-flood activities to bring respite. In addition to even giving relief materials to these farmers and flood victims, and strengthening the activities of NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency, SEMA at the state level, and LEMA at the local government level.
All right, so with the present situation now, the federal government is on a campaign of, eat homegrown food. That's why we understand that the foreign rice is contraband in Nigeria today. Only the local rice that farmers and people do eat here. Now, don't you think that at this point now, the federal government should allow foreign rice to come in? Because we already have a situation whereby the locally made rice are no more, they've almost gone into extinction. They are not available. So don't you think that foreign rice should come in now? Foreign farm produce should come in now?
Well, I will share your thoughts too. as an intervention, so that by the time we would have finally get our feet back on the ground, we can now go back to preventing them from coming in.
Yeah.
But for now, it's like you are preparing soup in your house and you lack oil. Suddenly discover there's no oil or salt. You quickly get from your neighbor and tell your neighbor, oh, by the time I go back to market, I will buy and refund. He may say refund, he may say don't refund. But what you have quickly got it to as an intervention to solve an immediate problem. I think I share in your line of thought in that regard.
Okay.
Because refusing to do that, we amount to further strangulating us at this end.
All right, so that's all time we permit us to take today on the program, African Discourse. Just like what we said, that the way forward, we've also said that federal governments are trying to make intervention, trying to allow foreign agricultural products to come in now because the locally produced food, they've all been swept away by water
People
and all
should go
that.
and learn how to swim too, because the way it is now, you have to have that skill of swimming so that if it happens, because people like I'm told in Isoko, they just sit down in their house, suddenly before you realize it, before it is morning, overnight, water has taken over the whole place.
All right, so about 19 countries have been affected by the recent flood. So we just hope and pray that we do not go through this again as we stay together as a continent. My name is Evan Zunokuge, and a very big thank you to Mr. Frank Nenemo, the environmental sanitationist from Ministry of Health in Edo State here for finding time to come on the show today. Thank you so much. All right, so until same time next week, goodbye and God bless you.